The garden always smelled of jasmine and wet earth. Tonight, it reeked of rot. She watched her mother kneel in the flower bed, sobbing, shoveling dirt with bare hands like a woman possessed. Then her mother froze. A wrist, pale, dirt-streaked. Bone-thin, poking up from the soil like a weed. The will's wrong name flashed in her mind. This wasn't about money. This was about ERASUR, E. in the end. It wasn't the silence that hurt, it was what it protected. Once, when she was 6, Claire had watched her father polish the brass doorknobs on the back porch. He never saw her watching. There was a rhythm to it, cloth twisting, metal gleaming, his breath quiet and steady as if every circle of the rag was a penance. She'd wanted to ask him then why he cleaned things no one else touched. But even as a child, she'd known better. Now at 34, she sat in a room cold enough to sting her knuckles, and she thought about those doorknobs. Her fingers curled around the edge of the chair. Walnut wood dug crescents into her palm. The lawyer cleared his throat. By the terms of the last will and testament of Mr. Arthur Ellison, she barely heard the words. Just syllables and paper shuffling. Faces 3 old men in suits, one slightly younger paralegal typing without. Looking up, and her stepmother Marianne. Marianne, whose scarlet lipstick bled into the cracks of her thin lips, whose eyes kept skimming over Claire like she wasn't there. Claire shifted, the locket at her throat cold and heavy, her thumb rubbed over its seam. A habit, the clasp had. Broken years ago, but she still wore it, a relic of the girl who believed family meant something. The estate, including the residence and all attached lands, is bequeathed in entirety to. The pause stretched too long. Claire's stomach clenched. The air seemed thicker. To Ms. Rose Mallory, a pen dropped. The sound snapped her. Like a rubber band. What? Claire's voice cracked before she could make it sharp. The lawyer glanced up, eyes already apologetic. Marianne's fingers, resting on the arm of her chair, flexed once, then stilled. She didn't look at Claire. There must be a mistake. Claire's hands shook against her skirt. I'm his daughter. Yes, Miss Ellison, The lawyer cleared his throat again. This is the most recent, duly executed document. Duly executed. The phrase scraped like grit in her teeth. Who the hell is Rose Mallory? No one answered, a heartbeat hook. The silence in the room had teeth. The men wouldn't meet her eyes. Marianne, though Arian stared at the tulip-patterned china cup in front of her, untouched tea cooling. A smear of lipstick marked the rim like a small quiet crime. Claire's throat burned. You let him do this? Marianne's mouth tightened. Not anger, something else flickered there. For a moment her shoulders sank, as if she too were holding back a scream. Then it was gone. The lipstick smile returned. Your father made his choices. Choices, that word again. It had haunted their house like a draft, slipping under doors, brushing Claire's ankles when she was a child. Choices to work late. Choices to forget birthdays. Choices to whisper closed-door arguments at midnight. The lawyer's pen tapped twice. There is a sealed letter addressed to you, Miss Ellison. Your father left instructions for it to be delivered privately. Claire didn't take it. Not yet. She stared at the envelope. Her name in his hand, she recognized the loops of the capital C, the way his lowercase r sagged as if tired halfway through the word dot. It felt like an accusation. She forced her fingers to close around it. The paper was thick, expensive. A faint smell clung to it, old tobacco and damp wood. Her father's study, narrator whisper, but the paper hid something worse than his words. Can you read it? She asked, voice barely above the heating vent's hum. Pardon? Read it now, aloud. The lawyer hesitated. Marianne's knuckles whitened. Claire thought she saw something in Marianne's expression. Fear. No. Too tender. Regret. No, Marianne said sharply. That's for you alone. Claire stood so fast the chair legs screeched against tile. The envelope crumpled in her grip. You're all cowards. Nobody stopped her as she walked out. The hallway smelled of lemon polish. She hated that smell now. Heartbeat hook. She didn't remember walking, but her legs carried her to the garden. The hydrangeas were overgrown, their blooms brown and sagging under early frost. This garden had been her father's pride, though he never let her help. "You'll ruin your nails," he'd say, with that wry smile. But his nails were always rimmed with dirt. She dug her fingers into the soil. It was cold, damp, clinging. She didn't know why. Not yet. Just a compulsion to feel the earth give way, to press into something real. Her nails snagged on something hard. She jerked back, dirt streaking her palm. It was nothing, a stone probably. But the pulse in her neck hammered like a drum dot in her. Had she heard her father's voice? "This garden keeps secrets better than I do." The locket swung loose against her collarbone. She opened it, her baby picture on one side. On the other, a sliver of folded paper she'd hidden years ago. She'd written "I'm sorry" on it after their last fight. She'd never shown him, her throat locked, narrator seed. "If justice still matters, you'll want the next page." Claire looked back at the house. Behind one window, Marianne watched her, hands resting on the sill, her face pale, lips a smear of red in the gray light. For a breath, just one, she looked like a woman cracking apart, but she didn't come out. Claire sat back on her heels, hands filthy. She didn't care. The letter was still in her pocket. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she whispered the name like an incantation, Rose Mallory. And the garden seemed to whisper it back. The final line lingered like breath in the frost. Dirt remembered everything. Some secrets don't rot. They root. When Claire was 9, she'd watched her father bury a cracked teacup under the hydrangeas. No explanation, just the back of his broad shoulders as he knelt in the dirt, his hands bare despite the cold. She'd wanted to ask why, but she stayed behind the curtain, silent. Years later, Marianne's voice would hiss in her ear, "You never did learn to ask the right questions." Tonight, the garden was different. Bigger somehow, wilder, weeds curled like sleeping snakes. The wind combed through dead hydrangea blooms, rattling dry petals. Claire stood at the edge of the grass, gripping a spade she'd stolen from the tool shed. The locket at her neck felt heavier now, as if it knew what she'd come for. The house lights were off except for one, Marianne's bedroom window glowing. Faint amber. Claire thought she saw the curtain twitch. Heartbeat hook. The garden wasn't empty. It was holding its breath. She stepped onto the soil. Each footfall was a betrayal. Her father had once scolded her for trampling his flower beds. "This ground remembers lies," he'd said, half smile hidden behind cigarette smoke. She'd thought it a joke then. The spade bit the dirt. Cold earth gave way in damp clumps. Claire worked slowly, forcing her breath to stay even. With each thrust, she felt the same shame she'd carried into this yard since childhood, kneeling here, alone, digging like a thief. Something flickered in memory. Her father's hands, mud-streaked, cradling the roots of a rose bush like an infant. "The soil feeds everything," he'd murmured. "Even what we wish it wouldn't." Her hands trembled. She dug deeper. A metallic scrape stopped her. She knelt, brushing aside loose soil. A flash of rust. Her heart thudded against her ribs. A drumbeat too loud for this quiet night. Narrator whisper. But metal in a garden never means nothing. She worked her fingers under it, nails breaking against rock. The object lifted with a reluctant groan. An old tin box, edges corroded, the lock barely holding. Claire's breath fogged as she pried it open. Inside, a child's bracelet, plastic beads spelling out "Aro-C." The string knotted clumsily, a charm shaped like a key dangling from the clasp. The key itself was rusted, teeth dulled with age. The name struck her like a thrown stone. Rose, the same name from the will. She held the bracelet in her palm. Her thumb traced the chipped paint on the beads. Each letter seemed to whisper back at Heartbeat hook. She almost dropped it when a memory answered. Rose Mallory. A girl barely older than Claire flashing through her childhood like a ghost in photographs her father never let her keep. A pale face behind Marianne's shoulder at one family party. Was there a Rose then? Or was Claire imagining? She remembered Marianne's voice again, years ago in the kitchen after her father's funeral. That quiet, venomous whisper, "He was never yours alone." Claire closed her fist around the bracelet. Dirt smeared her knuckles, sinking into the half-moons of her nails. Marianne's voice came from the garden path. Soft, almost hesitant. "You're trespassing, Claire." Claire flinched. She hadn't heard her come out. Marianne stood there barefoot, her silk robe hanging loose. The lipstick from earlier was gone, leaving her mouth pale, almost fragile. "You knew," Claire said. "I knew many things," Marianne replied. But her eyes didn't hold the usual edge. There was something raw there. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. Claire rose, gripping the spade like a weapon. "Who is she?" Marianne's laugh was small and bitter. "Ask your father. He's dead." Then, "Ask the dirt. It answers more honestly than men ever will." Narrator seed. If you're ready for the truth, you'll want the next page. Marianne turned to leave, but her voice floated back. "Be careful what you dig for, Claire. Some roots pull you under." Claire waited until the door clicked shut. Her chest felt hollow, ribs aching around a breath she couldn't take. She looked down at the rusted key in her palm. It was tied to the bracelet with a child's knot. How long had it been here? And why buried? She shoved the box into her satchel and sank to her knees again. There had to be more. The spade hit something hard. Metal again, deeper this time. She scraped at the soil until her nails bled. The sound came harsh, undeniable, something hidden. Something waiting. And under the rose bush. Something metal scraped her spade. There are children born in light, and others, hidden in closets. Claire had been 9 the first time she heard the name. It was a Sunday. A morning of sunlight slanting across the kitchen table. Her father sat at the head, buttering toast with practiced care. His cufflink gleamed as his wrist flexed. Beside him, Marianne was dabbing lipstick on a folded napkin, eyes averted. "Rosie," he murmured. Soft, almost tender, the knife stilled in Marianne's hand. Claire looked up from her cereal. "Who's Rosie?" Silenced. Her father's eyes flicked to Marianne. For a breath, just one, something unguarded passed between them. Then the mask slid back. "Eat your breakfast, Claire," he said, voice low, final, heartbeat hook. The air smelled of toast but tasted like secrets. She tried again later, tugging at her mother's sleeve as Marianne scrubbed a lipstick stain from a china cup. "Who's Rosie?" Marianne's fingers paused on the rim. She rubbed harder until her knuckles whitened, the porcelain squealing in protest. "Nobody," she said. But Marianne didn't meet her daughter's eyes. Years later, Claire would remember that day, not for the name, but for the look Marianne wore, like a woman scrubbing blood that wouldn't come out. Claire pushed the memory away as she dug deeper into the garden, the night air stinging her throat. Dirt caked her hands, working into the cracks of her skin. The spade felt heavier with each thrust. She could still hear his voice. "This ground remembers lies." Narrator whisper, "But lies aren't the only things buried here." In the flash of memory, she saw herself again at 9, crouched on the staircase, landing, watching her father whisper into the phone. His words were low, almost apologetic. "Rosie, I can't tonight." She had pressed her small hand to the banister, the wood cool and sticky under her palm. "Rosie, not Rose, not Miss Mallory, just Rosie," the way he'd said Claire's name when tucking her in. Downstairs, Marianne had been setting the table for 3, unaware or pretending. Claire never knew which. Heartbeat hook. Even as a child, she felt the weight of a 4th-place setting unlaid. That night, Marianne's voice had broken through Claire's door after bedtime. Muffled, sharp. She'd find out eventually. "Children aren't stupid." His reply was softer. She doesn't need to know. She's innocent. The word had stung, though she didn't understand where then. Now, in the garden, innocence felt like a cruel joke. Claire's spade struck something hard. She dropped to her knees, clawing at the soil. Her fingernails caught on metal a corner of another box, smaller than the first. She pried it loose. The hinge creaked. Inside lay a photograph. Her father, younger, his arm wrapped around a little girl. The girl's hair was the same shade as Marianne's, but her smile was not Marianne's smile. Claire's stomach turned. The back of the photo bore a single line in his hand. Rose's first Sunday here. Narrator aside, but the photo hid something. Worse than truth, it hid a choice. The box also held a receipt, edges yellowed, from a toy shop in town. The date was from the year Claire turned 6. The name on the receipt wasn't hers. Marianne's voice cut across the garden like a blade. "You were always curious." Claire jerked up. Marianne stood a few feet away, her robe tied too tightly, arms folded against the chill. "Why didn't you tell me?" Claire's words came out hoarse. Marianne exhaled. "Because I wasn't brave enough to ruin you." It was the first honest thing Marianne had said in years. Her face, washed pale by moonlight, seemed older now, softer. Her lips bore no lipstick, just the faint cracks of a woman who'd kissed too many lies. "You knew about her." Claire's hands trembled around the photo. "I knew about all of it." Marianne's voice wavered. "Your father loved you both. But he didn't know how to divide love without breaking it." "You call this love?" Claire gestured at the dirt-streaked box, her voice rising. "Hiding a sister from me? Would you rather he'd chosen?" Marianne's eyes glistened. She looked down, blinking hard. He couldn't. Narrator seed. "If betrayal leaves scars, you'll want to see the next cut." Claire turned back to the earth. Her locket felt cold against her skin. She pressed her thumb to its seam until it hurt. "I deserve to know," she said quietly. "Yes." Marianne's whisper almost didn't reach her. "You did." For once, there was no defense in her stepmother's voice, only a hollow sort of grief. Claire's spade dug deeper. The soil was looser here. She hit another obstruction metal, larger, heavier. The sound echoed in the still night. Heartbeat hook. This one didn't feel like a box. It felt like a door. Claire's breath caught. Her hand stilled on the handle. She didn't want to open it. Not yet. But she would. Claire had never met her sister until now. The things we don't inherit tell louder stories than the things we do. Claire had never liked her father's study. As a child, she called it the coffin room, all dark walnut, stiff air, and a door that closed too softly. The smell lingered even now. Old leather, stale tobacco, and something sweeter underneath. Like rotting apples. She stepped inside. Dust clung to everything. The sunlight shafting through heavy curtains caught at midder, tiny motes drifting like slow snowfall. Heartbeat. Hook. It felt like breathing someone else's memory. She touched the edge of his desk. The wood was cool, slick with the polish Marianne still applied long after his death. The locked drawer sat in the corner, small and unremarkable. But it had always been forbidden. Her thumb rubbed the locket at her neck. Inside, the folded apology note from childhood still unopened. She had written it after smashing his watch. She never gave it to him. The locket clicked shut. Claire searched the drawers above paper clips, pens, a torn receipt for Marianne's favorite lipstick. The shade name made her stomach turn. Bloodstone. Her fingers stilled on a brass key taped to the underside of the middle drawer. It slid home in the lock with a reluctant sigh. The drawer stuck at first. Then it gave way. Inside, papers stacked in neat rows, each labeled in his sharp handwriting. But beneath them was a folder marked Mallory, narrator whisper. But the folder wasn't written in his hand. Claire lifted it out. Deeds, bank statements. A trust fund set up 18 years ago in the name of Rose Mallory. Dates that aligned too perfectly with her own milestones. Her 10th birthday. Her high school graduation. And at the bottom, several letters signed Arthur Ellison. She scanned. The signature. It didn't match. The flourish of the capital A was off. The lilt of the double L, too stiff. She'd seen his writing all her life in birthday cards, on post-it notes stuck to the fridge. This wasn't it. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the folder. Heartbeat hook. For the first time, she wondered if dead men could forge their own names. She remembered Marianne again, the night after the funeral, standing at the sink with bare feet on cold tile. "You think you know everything because he left you a locket," she had murmured. "But you don't know what it cost me to keep your world clean." At the time, Claire thought it was cruelty. Now she wasn't sure. The folder's last page was an email printout. The header showed a familiar law firm. The estate lawyer's name, Mr. Hollis, was scrawled in the margin. Claire dialed his number with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. Hollis speaking. "This is Claire Ellison," she said. "I have questions about the trust in Rose Mallory's name." A pause. Miss Ellison, I'm not sure I can help. Did my father ever sign these documents in your presence?" "I can't recall exactly. You were his lawyer for 20 years. "Yes, but," his voice caught, "the memory isn't what it used to be. Or it's convenient to forget." Silence, narrator seed. If truth is written in ink, who's holding the pen? She ended the call. Claire stared down at the signature again. The pen strokes were deliberate, hesitant, as if written by someone mimicking confidence. She thought of Marianne, hands shaking slightly when she poured tea. Of Marianne saying, he didn't know how to divide love without breaking it. Claire whispered it out loud, as if saying the truth could shrink it. "This isn't his signature." Her breath fogged the glass of the photo frame on his desk. "It's hers." Truth lives where you're not supposed to look. When Claire was 7, she'd buried a bird in the garden. It had flown into the window, neck limp, wings spread like a prayer undone. She had dug with her hands, her father's spade, too heavy for her arms. When she placed the small body in the hole, her fingers brushed something harder than earth. A stone, she thought then. She never told anyone. Now, the garden soil clung under her nails again. The night was damp, breath cold in her chest. Her hands were raw, half-moons of dried blood under the nails where the spade's handle had rubbed. Skin to pulp, she dug anyway. The earth was heavy, wet like flesh. Heartbeat hook. The smell rose first. Not rot, not yet, but the sour memory of it. The locket at her throat tapped her collarbone as she worked. She didn't remember putting it on, but she never took it off anymore. She pressed her thumb to the seam, not opening it. Each shovelful felt like a confession. Her father's words echoed in her head. "The garden remembers lies." The blade struck something. Hollow, she froze. The sound vibrated up the shaft and into her bones. Claire dropped to her knees and clawed at the dirt. Fingertips raw. A corner of rusted tin emerged, edges eaten away. She pried it free. The box was child-sized. Inside, the smell hit her sweet and metallic. A jawbone, small enough to cup in one palm. A bracelet identical to the one she'd found before, and a tiny leather boot, cracked with age. Claire's stomach turned. Her breath came shallow, her heart beat a drumbeat in her throat. Narrator aside, but the box didn't just hold remains. It held a question: who was meant to be buried? Footsteps crunched on the path behind her. Claire. She turned. Marianne stood there, barefoot again, her robe pulled tight. Her face looked carved from wax in the moonlight, too pale, eyes too bright. "You found her. Why didn't you stop him?" Claire's voice broke. Marianne's lips parted. For a moment she looked like she might cry. But no tears came. "You think I could stop Arthur Ellison?" Marianne's voice was small. "I wasn't his wife, not really. I was his accomplice. You let him bury a child." "No," Marianne's voice hardened. "I let him bury his mistake." Heartbeat hook. Mistakes don't wear bracelets. Claire rose, gripping the tin box so tightly the metal bit her palms. This isn't a mistake. This is Rose. She was never meant to exist. Marianne's whisper cracked. I told him to send her away. He couldn't, so he made her disappear. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Did you? Claire asked. Marianne's face was unreadable. It's time people knew what this house cost. Narrator seed. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Blue lights flashed at the edge of the property. Clara clutched the locket, the cold metal biting. She whispered it. Not to Marianne, not to herself, but to the dirt. This land belonged to a child who never left it. The glass clicked in the sink, a flash of red, smeared on. The rim lipstick, maybe, or rust. Claire blinked. No, not lipstick. Just the light catching old blood in porcelain cracks, her mother's china. The set only came out after funerals or on the nights her father left the house for business. Claire used to press her face to the rim, trying to smell what the silence tasted like. Now, 30 years later, she washed the cup alone. The kettle hissed behind her. In the quiet, it sounded like a breath someone was holding in. She poured water over the dried leaves. Jasmine, the kind her father never liked. Smells like rot, he used to say. But that smell was a woman's name. Now Lila. She found the letters under the floorboard in the sewing room. Not even hidden well, just wedged behind brittle rolls of moth-eaten linen. A stack of envelopes, tied with the same blue ribbon her mother used to wear in her hair. Claire's fingers trembled when she touched the knot. Not out of fear, memory. First. Letter, 1989. Miss Mallory, stop contacting this household. There is no legal claim. The court has ruled. Second, you cannot bury blood. Her thumb smeared old ink. The letter had been read many times, but not the last one. Still sealed, the paper warped where someone, maybe her mother, maybe not, had stopped short of opening it. Claire slid it carefully. Breath shallow. Inside, if you are reading this, then he is dead, and you deserve the truth. She sat down. Not because she was tired, but because the ground in her chest shifted, and she needed something solid beneath her. Heartbeat hook. Some letters weigh more than coffins. She read. Leela had loved a man named John, Claire's father. They had a daughter. For a while, the affair was just stolen Sundays and cheap perfume. Then the daughter was taken. Lies spun, restraining orders filed. Leela's voice, once pleading, had sharpened to threats, but the last line of the letter was soft. My daughter is alive, or she was. Before your father took her. Claire stared at the name scrawled at the bottom, Lila Mallory. She said it out loud. The kettle ticked behind her as it cooled. Lila had written to her mother, not to him. That was the worst part. He had known. He chose. Claire picked up the ribbon again. Ran her thumb along the groove. There had been 2 little girls once. Maybe 3, and one was vanished, swept under the rug like an accident. She opened the old locket she kept in the desk drawer. It still held the black and white photo of her parents, stiff with forced smiles. But behind the photo was a slip of paper she hadn't noticed before. Tucked between the hinge, a receipt, one-way ticket. Memphis to Charleston. April 17, 1989. Her father had never been to Charleston. Or so he said. Retention spike. But the receipt told a different story. She pressed the paper flat. Her hands didn't shake now. In the hallway, a floorboard groaned. She froze, waited. Nothing. Still. The sound echoed like a memory. Her father, pacing at night, always with his shoes on, even in silence. She used to think he was afraid of something under the floorboards. Now, she knew it had been guilt. Heartbeat hook. Even ghosts have footsteps. In the garden, the roses had bloomed early. The same yellow ones from the photo album, his prized bushes. She remembered once clipping one and being slapped hard across the mouth. You don't cut what you can't grow. He'd snap. And now the garden bloomed without him. Greedy, beautiful. She stood by the window. the unopened envelope trembling. In her hand, one of the petals brushed the glass in the breeze, like fingers tapping to get in. Claire turned, walked to the cabinet, opened the tin box where she kept the things too sharp to throw away: death certificates, insurance policies, the spare key. To his lockbox, she added the letter, and then slowly she added the receipt. Silent setup. Tomorrow she'd drive to Charleston, see if Leela had ever found her way back. Maybe talk to someone. Maybe knock on a door with the wrong name on it. She didn't cry. Antagonist depth. Her father had once whispered to her, the night of her mother's funeral, "People don't break from hate, Claire. They break from love they think they don't deserve." She hadn't understood then. Now she did. He had buried love, like a weed. But the garden remembered. Retention spike. If the past still breathes, you'll want the next page. Claire reached for the kettle again, the old china cup waiting beside it. Red on the rim still, the roses tapping the glass. She sipped, watched the steam rise like breath from the grave. Then she whispered the line again, as if saying it made it true. "My daughter is alive, or she was, before your father took her." She remembered the smell of varnished cheap pine, slick with sweat and lemon polish. Her father's office door had always been slightly open when Claire was small, just enough for her to see the edge of his desk, the shine of his shoes. The second glass he never refilled in front of her mother. Today, the door in front of her was painted green. She knocked. A dog barked once from somewhere deeper in the house. Then silence. Claire almost left. The letter burned hot in her coat pocket, folded 4 times. The corner creased where her thumbnail had worried the paper raw. But the door opened. Rose was thinner than she expected. Not fragile, but held together like someone who hadn't been hugged in years. Same eyes, but colder. A glacier version of her own. They stared. Rose didn't speak, just stepped aside. The invitation was wordless, wary. Inside, everything smelled like soap and ironed cotton. No clutter, no photos. Just one small cross nailed over the doorframe. Claire caught herself looking too long at it. Heartbeat hook. Some homes cleaned the past so well. It screams louder in the silence. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same kind of table their father used to polish, until you could see your shame in it. Claire placed the letter between them. Rose didn't touch it. "I didn't come for money," Claire said. "Or apologies." "Good." Rose folded her arms. "Because I don't have either." Outside, wind brushed the windows like a warning. The air between them cooled. Claire studied the room. A chipped mug sat drying in the rack, red lipstick still clinging to the rim. The kind of color their father said made women look cheap. She said nothing. Just waited. "I know who you are," Rose said after a while. "I used to think I made you up. You didn't. I hoped I had." Claire flinched. Rose glanced at her, softer now. Regret, maybe, or pity. It was hard to tell. Some expressions were too many masks. Claire reached into her bag, pulled out the locket. "He gave this to my mother the year before I was born." Rose didn't move. "There's a receipt inside. Charleston, 1989, your birthday." A pause. Then, "He wasn't at the hospital." Claire's voice cracked low. "Neither was he at mine." Heartbeat hook. They were 2 daughters born from absence. Rose finally reached for the locket. Her fingers hovered, then dropped. Claire pushed it across. "It's yours," she said. Rose blinked. Looked away. "He was different with me," she said. Strict, but soft too. Like he was trying to unbruise something. Claire said, "Guilt has good manners when it wants something." That got a smile, barely, but it counted. "I remember once," Rose said, almost like a confession. "He held my hand while crossing a street. I was 8. I thought this is what love is. Then he let go too soon, and I ran into a cyclist." A pause. "He didn't check on me, just yelled." You watch where you're going. Her jaw tightened. That's how I learned the lesson. Claire. Let it settle. Pain, passed down like heirlooms. He told me you were dead. The sentence landed like a dropped plate. Sharp, final. Claire didn't blink. And what did he say I died of? A fever. When you were a baby. He said your mother lost her mind afterward and tried to take someone else's child. Claire closed her eyes. So that was the version she got. Not even cruel, just sanitized. Grief rewritten in past tense. He never mentioned my name again. Rose said, that sounds more like him. Retention spike. But silence isn't truth, it's strategy. Claire leaned back. I hated him for lying. Rose said, I hated him for telling the truth too late. The wind picked up. A tree branch scraped the side of the house, repetition of that same echo. Claire had heard outside her childhood bedroom for years. Scrape. Pause. Scrape again. Rose finally touched the locket. I used to think the reason he loved me was because I wasn't you, she said. Now I wonder if it was because he couldn't find you. Claire's throat tightened. Maybe both. Rose opened the locket. Inside, the photo stared back at them, John Mallory, smiling like a man who'd never broken anything that bled. He was charming, Claire said, even when he was cruel. Rose nodded. He had a scar on his hip. Said he got it fighting. A man in a bar. He got it falling off a ladder while drunk. Silence. Rose picked up the letter at last. Unfolded it slowly. Read halfway through. Then stopped. I don't want to know what's in here, she whispered. Because then I'll have to choose. Between what? Between memory and truth. Claire looked down at her hands. She hadn't even noticed. The receipt was still curled in her palm. I know what that's like, she said. But it's not really a choice. Just a delay. Rose reached across the table. Not for her, but for the cup. Red on the rim. Still there, symbolic object. She rinsed it gently. Scrubbed the mark with her thumb. Kept scrubbing. Claire watched. She wore that color too, Rose said. Aunt June said it made her feel like a woman instead of a ghost. She wasn't your aunt. I know. Silence. Claire reached into her bag one last time. Slid over. A small flash drive. Silver. Unlabeled. Rose stared. It's everything I found, Claire said. Court records, letters, proof. Silence set up. I don't know what to do with this, Rose murmured. Same. But you brought it. Claire nodded. Retention spike. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Rose didn't move. The flash drive stayed between them like a loaded gun. Claire stood. I'm not here to make you hate him, she said. Only to ask if we both deserve to stop pretending. Rose looked up, eyes unreadable. Then I don't hate you. That mattered more than it should have. Claire stepped to the door. Hand on the knob. Her breath felt heavier than her coat. Behind her, Rose said, Do you believe in blood ties? Claire hesitated. Only when they bleed. She opened the door. The air outside was cold, but clean. The locket still lay open on the table, face turned up. Still smiling. As if he'd never lied at all. The first time Claire forged her mother's signature, she was 10. A field trip slip. Crumpled and smoothed again on the dining table. Her hand trembled the whole time, not from fear of being caught, but from how easy it was. The way someone else's name could move through her like it belonged. Now, all these years later, she sat in a gray office that smelled like toner and sweat, staring at a signature that was supposed to be her father's. It wasn't. That's a loop-forged lowercase g, the analyst said. He tapped the glass with a chewed pen cap. Yours is a standard cursive. His whoever he is wrote like he learned from a typewriter. Claire didn't flinch. She'd seen the will. Read. The words that cut her out cleanly. Left everything to the surviving bloodline. A phrase so sterile it could have been copied from a tax form. But the signature on that final page didn't match the ones on the old birthday cards, the check she'd found in the garage, or the note he left in her mother's Bible the week she died. Heartbeat hook. Even lies try to dress like family. Could it be a medical tremor? She asked. He was on medication. The analyst shook his head. A tremor's erratic. This is too perfect, deliberate. Claire swallowed hard. So it's a forgery. It's a betrayal with a pen. The sentence knocked the air out of her. She stood slowly, thanked him. Paid in cash. Outside, rain had begun. The kind that painted streets into mirrors. She lit a cigarette, though she hadn't smoked in years. The taste was bitter and too familiar, like kissing an old mistake. Her hands shook slightly, not from the nicotine, but from the years that were now officially stolen. Retention spike. But the signature wasn't the only thing missing. The lawyer's office was 2 blocks down. A brown building with mirrored windows reflecting nothing but a crooked sky. She'd been there before. Once, after the funeral, when the reading of the will felt more like a sentencing. This time, she didn't call ahead. The secretary looked up, startled. Ms. Mallory? Claire nodded. I believe Mr. Hartman. I'm not here for pleasantries. Hartman came out seconds later. Same wool suit, same fake warmth. Claire, he said, this is unexpected. So was the forgery. He blinked. I've had it analyzed. The will, that signature isn't his. A flicker crossed his face. A twitch too fast to be rehearsed. Handwriting analysis is speculative. It's illegal. Let's not jump to. She stepped forward. Don't bother, you already did. A silence held between them. Then faintly, he changed. It, near the end. You told me it was signed 2 months before he died. He hesitated. That was all she needed. Claire pulled a folded copy of the will from her bag. Marked, annotated, stained with questions. She pointed to the signature page. The loop in the G, the tail on the Y, you're a lawyer, Hartman. You know. He lowered his voice. I'm just the executor. No, she said. You're the middleman, and someone paid you. Heartbeat hook. Guilt never leaves fingerprints, but it always smudges the paper. He stepped back. I think you should leave. Claire didn't move. Tell me who signed it. I don't know. Then tell me who delivered it. I lie again, and I go public. The secretary's breath was tight behind the glass wall. No one moved. Finally, Hartman's shoulders slumped. Age pooled in the corners of his face. Something tired surfaced like the weight of too many sealed envelopes. It came through a courier, he said. No return name. Just a folder, notarized, stamped, looked real enough. Real enough to screw me. He met her eyes. I thought you were already gone, he said. Claire stiffened. Excuse me? That's what they told me. That you were dead. That your mother changed her name and vanished. That the woman in the will, Rose, was all he had. Who told you that? A pause. Then, the housekeeper, Lorna. Lorna, a name Claire hadn't heard in years. The woman who always wore yellow gloves and never looked her in the eye. She forged it? I don't know. But you didn't. Ask. He looked away. Claire pulled out the flash drive. Silver, labeled now, Mallory estate proof. She placed it on the desk. Court dates in 10 days. I'd start shredding your own copies if I were you. Silence set up. She walked out before he could respond. Rain still fell, harder now. At home, the receipts lay where she left them, spread across the kitchen table. Like a trail of crumbs, Claire moved methodically. She matched each check to each deposit. Her father's name was there, but the routing numbers changed. The account that received the money wasn't his, or hers, or even Rose's. It belonged to a man named Edwin Pike. Claire had never heard the name. But the last deposit had cleared 3 weeks after. Pike's listed date of death. Retention spike. But the dead don't cash checks unless someone signs for them. She stared at the screen. Bile rising, she dug into the county records. Edwin Pike. Former notary, expired license, no family on file. 1 car registered, 1 bankruptcy. No digital footprint after 2013. Claire leaned back in her chair. Someone used a ghost to sign. Away a family. The locket lay open beside the laptop. The chain tangled, the hinge bent slightly from age. Her father's photo had started to fade, but the eyes were still sharp. Still smug. She remembered once, being 13, overhearing him on the phone. I don't care if it's legal. I care. If it sticks, that was him. That was his gospel. Now she wondered how many of his truths were forged, not just signed. She looked again at the check image. Pike's signature was a loop-forged G, the same dot it matched. Emotional reversal. Her shame turned cold into something cleaner. Like resolve. She printed the image, pinned it beside the flash drive. The torn receipt fluttered under the fan. Charleston to Memphis, dated the week he'd told her mother he was on a retreat. Liar. But not just any liar, a man who thought paperwork would bury the past. If only he'd lived long enough to know dead things grow roots. Claire stood, grabbed the envelope marked Exhibit C, slid the image inside. The kitchen light flickered once, then held steady. Outside, the wind carried in the sound of tires, someone leaving or arriving. The will had been forged, the lawyer had been bought, and the last check had been cashed. Under a dead man's name. When Claire was 7, her father told her funerals weren't for the dead. They're a performance, he said, straightening his tie in the hallway mirror. Grief, if you do it right, earns you something. She hadn't known what he meant then. Now, standing in the vestibule of St. Agnes, staring at the polished casket with his name carved deep in brass, she understood. The man who taught her silence could be weaponized was being eulogized by strangers who only knew the mask. The air smelled of lily and old wood. The organ wheezed something solemn. Rows of heads bowed politely. And Rose was there. Black dress. No veil, her hands folded so tight the knuckles had gone white. Claire hadn't seen her since the will blew open, since the forgery, the analyst, the check cashed by a corpse. But here she was. Grief etched on her face like scripture. Honest or performative, Claire couldn't yet tell. Heartbeat hook. Some mourners cry for ghosts. Others cry for what they finally see. The pews were full. Small-town loyalty, thick and unquestioning. Men. Her father had coached in baseball. Women he'd once held doors for. No one knew about Lila. No one knew about the daughter erased in ink. Claire sat in the last pew. Close enough to witness. Far enough to keep breathing. The priest spoke of legacy, of quiet strength, of devotion to family. Claire's lips twitched. She reached into her coat, pulled out a folded page yellowed at the edges, a tear through the center. Lila's final letter. He told me you were dead. A whisper at first. Then the weight of ink curled around every word. She had read it so many times the paper knew her fingerprints by name. At the front, the choir began. Nearer, my God, to thee. The same hymn from her mother's funeral. Echo motif. Claire stood, walked down the aisle, not fast, not loud, just steady like the steps she used to take when she was young and already too used to walking on eggshells. Whispers stirred. Necks craned. Rose's head turned. Eyes locked. Something flickered. Resentment, yes, but beneath it, fear. Claire reached the altar. I'd like to say something, she told the priest. He blinked. This isn't, but she had already turned. I'm Claire Mallory, she said, voice carrying like a quiet fire. Some of you knew my father, but not all of him. She unfolded the letter and began to read. It was not a dramatic reading. No tremble. No crescendo. Just truth, steady and brutal. About the other daughter. About the forged will. About the signatures that didn't match. The money laundered through dead men. The lies stitched like embroidery into every generous gesture he ever made. About Rose raised. In the light, told the first daughter died young, that her mother was hysterical, about how silence, when signed in legal ink, becomes a prison, heartbeat hook, and how a lie buried deep enough starts to rot everything around it. The room did not move. Even the priest was still. Claire reached into her pocket, pulled out the locket. Held it up. My mother wore this until the day he made her disappear. Not kill her, he didn't need to. He made her story unbelievable. That was enough. She didn't look at Rose until the very end, and he made you believe you were all that was left. I don't blame you. I just need you to stop pretending it doesn't matter. Silence. Then footsteps. Rose stood. Her voice was tight, controlled. Are you done? Claire nodded. Rose turned to the room. He raised me. He made breakfast. He paid for college. He kissed my forehead when I cried over boys. Maybe he lied. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he was both. Her hands trembled now. I don't know what he was to you, but to me, he was real. Claire said nothing. Emotional reversal. She had come here angry, but now the anger felt like ash. What do you do with love when you realize it was just a replica? The organist fidgeted. The priest cleared his throat. No one applauded. Number 1 intervened. Truth doesn't need a verdict. Later, outside, the bells rang noon. A harsh, bright sound that made everyone blink like waking from a long dream. Mourners spilled into the gravel lot. Some avoided her eyes. A few gave small nods. One man offered a handshake. She didn't take it. She stood under the dogwood tree, the letter folded, again in her hand. Rose came out last. She didn't approach. Claire didn't move, but they stared across the parking lot like survivors of different wars. I didn't know. Rose said, just loud enough for the breeze to carry. I believe you. Claire replied, and she did. But belief and forgiveness weren't the same. Rose stepped forward, pulled something from her purse. A photo, worn, bent. Their father, holding a baby on a back porch, smiling. It's not me in the picture, Rose said. I only realized this morning. I looked at it 100 times and thought it was. Claire reached out, took it. The baby had Claire's curls, her mother's dimples. Leela's hope. She folded it gently. I never wanted his money, Claire said. I know. Rose answered. They stood in silence, strangers tied by blood and betrayal. Then Rose looked toward the church, her jaw tight. Eyes wet. He told me I was his first. Claire swallowed. He told me I was his only. The wind shifted. Rose took a shaky breath. He wasn't a father, Claire whispered, more to the sky than the woman beside her. He was a thief. And from the altar behind them, the bells rang again, once, twice, 3 times. Like a verdict no one could overturn. When Claire was 9, she buried a shoebox behind the garden shed. Inside, her mother's lipstick, a broken figurine, and a cassette labeled "Play If I Disappear." She never did. But the tape stayed buried. Now, decades later, another tape had surfaced. It came in a yellowed envelope, postmarked from Nebraska. No return name, just a slanted scrawl she recognized instantly. Aunt Mara, the one who never visited, never called, but always sent checks wrapped in silence. Claire opened it with steady hands. Inside, a single Maxell cassette, warped slightly. At the corners, ink faded. A note on scrap paper. He left this with me in '98, told me to burn it. I didn't. Thought you should hear. The player was older than Claire's new life. Found at a thrift store, dusty and stubborn. She had to rewind the tape with a pencil, slowly, as the reels shivered. Heartbeat hook. Some truths can only speak from the dead. She pressed play. The tape hissed first, then a long, aching silence. Then, his voice. I don't know where to start. Even recorded, his tone carried that same careful control. The kind used in courtrooms and dinner tables. Claire sat on the floor, knees pulled tight. The locket rested beside her, open-faced. Her mother's photo blurred at the edge. "I suppose I owe you." "More than I gave," the voice continued. "This tape isn't for the courts. It's not for Rose. It's for the one I left behind." Claire flinched. "I lied. A lot. Lied to cover fear. Lied to protect pride. Lied to feel like a man in control. But mostly, I lied about you." The breath that followed cracked. "Like age. Like shame. You were born out of a moment I wasn't supposed to have. But your mother loved you from the first heartbeat. I didn't know how to. Not without destroying everything I built." Claire pressed her palm to the floor. "It was cold. I told people you were gone. That she'd run with you. That she was unstable. I fed that story until it became law." He cleared his throat. "On the tape, it sounded like gravel. I forged things. Paid people. Lorna helped. So did Hartman. They all had something to lose. And they feared me more than they pitied her. Heartbeat hook. The worst betrayal isn't being erased. It's being rewritten. By someone who knew you." Claire paused the tape, stared at the ceiling, then pressed play again. "I didn't know you'd come back. Thought maybe you'd stay gone. But when I heard from Mara that you'd been asking around," a beat of silence, "I panicked. Told Rose half-truths. Told the lawyer to move quickly. I couldn't let you open the past. I'd buried it too. Deep." The tape clicked softly as it turned. "Maybe I'm saying all this because I'm tired. Or maybe because I started dreaming of your mother again. Every night she's on the porch, holding that lipstick. The one with the chipped gold cap. She just stares, doesn't say a word." Claire reached out and touched the locket. Its hinge had cracked, but it still opened. Still held. "I was scared of what you'd become," he said. "What you'd know. What you'd do with the truth." Claire exhaled. Her throat ached. "I used to think burying something meant it was gone. But your mother planted everything in silence. And silence grows back wild." He paused again. The kind of pause where you hear a man's regrets crawling up his throat. "I think you deserved better than me. If you're hearing this, then I couldn't lie anymore." Then the tape hissed out. Just static dot. She let it play. 5 minutes of nothing, then silence. She sat still for a long time, not angry, not weeping, just hollowed. Like a room after the furniture's gone. Retention spike. But some rooms echo louder once the door is shut. The cassette clicked off. Outside, the garden swayed in wind. The soil still wet from last night's rain. In the far corner, something green poked through, barely a sprout. But stubborn dot. She got up, opened the drawer, pulled out the torn receipt. Memphis to Charleston. Her mother's last trace. She pinned it to the wall beside the photo of the forged will. Then picked up the flash drive. Silent setup. She looked again at the locket. Open. Waiting. Then down at the shoebox she'd dug up last week. Still intact. After all these years. Inside her child voice. On tape. Her mother's favorite lipstick, dulled and worn. The figurine with its cracked wing. She smiled softly. Not from joy, not from recognition. Healing doesn't bloom in silence. It claws through it. She placed the new cassette beside the old one, labeled. It. Then sealed the box again. And on the side, in ink that would last for whoever's next, the wallpaper peeled like skin where the sun never touched. In the attic, Rose counted the seconds between footsteps. 14, 17, 32. She used to count for fun. Now she counted to measure how far the danger was. There was no lock on the inside of the attic door. Only from the outside. She had learned to whisper to the rafters. The dust, she imagined, kept her secrets. Even now, she mouthed them silently into the floorboards. "I am real. I am not his." Heartbeat hook. Some children learn silence the same way, others learn lullabies. The Pinju. "I am not his." Heartbeat hook. Some children learn silence the same way others learn lullabies. The room had slanted ceilings and a single window that didn't open. The glass was bubbled like tears, warping the trees below. Some nights she could hear music from the house across the road. A piano, soft, someone learning. She never cried anymore. Not since the time she did, and he'd come up with the belt, shouting that girls who sob like their mothers end up like them. Her mother had left a mark on the windowsill, tiny scratches made with a fork's edge. 4 tallies and a diagonal strike. The 6th one never came. Rose traced them sometimes with her thumbnail. Aunt Lorna said her mother was sick, that she'd run away from the hospital, but the window never forgot the scream. One night, Rose had heard it. It had bent the walls, then nothing. No footsteps for 3 days after. Just his voice, measured and slow, through the vent in the floor. If you stay quiet, you stay safe. The walls were thin, the attic thicker. One morning she found a teacup near the crawl space. China cracked, lipstick still on the rim. It wasn't hers, but it smelled like her. Powder, orange peel. The red shade she wasn't allowed to wear. She kept it like a relic. Like maybe if she pressed her lips where her mother had, something would return. Heartbeat hook. The cup stayed warm longer than her father ever did. Downstairs, the door slammed. She froze. Ears trained to the air. His footsteps were sharp today. He was angry. She knew the rhythm of that dot. Then came voices. Low, arguing. She crawled to the vent, careful not to creak. You said she was gone. She is. Then why the letter? Burn it. She said she's coming. She won't make it past the porch. The silence that followed was louder than the argument. Later that night, he came up with soup. He never brought soup. She didn't touch it. He didn't speak. Just looked at her for too long, then closed the door behind him. That night, the wind changed. She smelled rain. And something else. Something sweet. Lavender. Familiar. She waited. Then a hand, pressing softly against the window from outside. A woman's face. Mouth wide. Eyes wider. Then movement. A blur of panic. Then the scream. Then nothing. She never saw her again. She pressed her palms to the glass until the sun came. A week passed. Then too, he brought her downstairs for dinner. First time in a month. The table was set with care. Lorna was there too, stirring wine in her glass, wearing red lipstick. She looked up. She's quiet now, you were right. Her father said nothing, just nodded. Then looked at Rose. You're home now, he said. We don't talk about the past, it's dangerous. She nodded. She knew the rules. But that night, she stole something from his drawer. A photograph her mother, holding her as a baby. She hid it behind a loose panel in the attic wall. Years later, Claire would find it, faded and creased, but still whole. Symbolic object. One winter morning, when the pipes groaned from the cold, he forgot to lock the attic door. She stood at the top of the stairs, shaking. She walked down. Slowly, carefully. The house felt different. Empty, like something had finally left. She walked out the back, barefoot in snow. Didn't look back. She ran. Heartbeat hook. Sometimes escape isn't a sprint. It's a whisper. Finally heard. Later, in foster homes, she lied about the scars on her wrist. Said they were accidents. Said she'd fallen. People believed her. Because some ghosts are too polite to make a scene. Years passed. She changed her name. Became the girl who held her breath through every conversation. Built her life like a room without windows. Until Claire. Until the funeral. Until the letter read aloud. Everything she'd buried came crawling through the walls. Her father had called it protection, but it was just fear, dressed in fatherhood. And now that he was gone, she still didn't feel safe. She only felt unfinished. Emotional reversal. In her new apartment, she hung nothing on the walls, but she kept the lipstick-rimmed cup in a drawer, wrapped in tissue. Some nights, she took it out, held it to her lips, and waited that final line. She never saw her mother again. But she remembers the scream, the courthouse. Steps were smaller than Claire remembered, not grand, not cinematic. Just chipped concrete and an old man sweeping leaves as if the verdict hadn't mattered at all. The papers said she'd won. But victory didn't feel like sunlight. It felt like wind through a cracked door, cold, sudden, hollow. The headlines had her name now. Not her father's, not his legacy, hers. And beneath it, the word fraud in bold. Under that, survivor. Funny how justice always came with two faces. Final. Outside. The sun angled hard against the glass. Claire breathed. Slow. Measured. Then finally said the words they hadn't dared before. We both lost him. But maybe now we can find ourselves. There'd been another funeral when Claire was 9. A girl with red berets who vanished from school and never came back. The town whispered about foster homes and dark men in pickup trucks. But Claire remembered the flyer. Remembered the locket her mother slipped into the donation box, silver, empty, trembling. That was the first time Claire learned a name could outlive a body. Now she stood with Rose in front of another stone. Same cemetery. Different ache. The marble was veiled, a thin linen sheet dancing in the breeze like a final breath. The sky was overcast, not dramatic, not stormy. Just gray enough to flatten everything. Claire's fingers clenched the envelope. Inside, one torn will. One notarized trust, and a list of names still missing. Heartbeat hook. Truth doesn't rise on its own. You have to dig it up, bleeding. The groundskeeper watched from the hill, unsure if he should leave. Claire gave him a small nod. He turned away, letting the moment belong to the daughters. Rose knelt first. Her hand brushed the grass. She placed a small object down near the base. A lipstick faded pink, the cap cracked. He used to say she wore it like a weapon, Rose whispered. Said it made her dangerous. Claire's eyes didn't move from the veil. He was afraid of women who remembered. Rose stood slowly. He taught us to forget. Claire reached out, lifted the cloth, heartbeat hook. But the stone bore two names now. One removed. One carved with care, her mother's Lila Mallory. Beloved. Betrayed. Remembered. And beneath, in smaller lettering, for every child still unheard. Claire didn't cry. She had done that already in courtrooms, in closets, into tapes soaked in his voice. She opened the envelope, took out the will. It had bled through its own ink-smudged signatures, falsified trust. She struck a match, held it steady. The flame danced toward truth. Then, ash. She let it scatter at the foot of the stone. Not for revenge, Claire said. Just. To stop carrying him. Rose didn't answer. She was staring at the stone like it might blink, antagonist depth. He told me once, she murmured, that my mother died of grief. But it wasn't grief, it was shame. Because she knew what he'd done to yours. Claire looked sideways at her. Did you believe him? I wanted to. Because the alternative meant I was raised by a lie. Claire softened. We both were. Behind them, the wind shifted. A leaf caught Claire's scarf. She didn't flinch. Just unwrapped it, folded it carefully, and placed it over the still warm ashes. A pause. Then Rose asked, "What now?" Claire handed her the remaining document, the new trust. For the Missing Daughters Fund. In honor of Lila. In memory of the erased. Rose ran a thumb across the signature line. Claire had signed it 3 nights ago, alone, after listening to the cassette again. Her father's voice cracking, cornered. Confessing, not out of love, but exhaustion. CDA, seed. Some truths don't come clean. They come crawling. I want to help, Rose said. Claire nodded. Then speak. Rose looked at the gravestone again. He told me once names matter more than people. That legacy is just a louder lie. Claire tilted her head. Maybe, but now we own it. Heartbeat hook. The louder the lie, the deeper the silence that follows it. They stood shoulder to shoulder. Not sisters. Not victims. Something else. Unnamed. Rose pulled something from her coat pocket. A USB. Simple. Black. Insignificant looking. I made backups. The tape. The documents. Just in case. Silent setup. Claire took it. Didn't ask where it would go. She already knew, into the safe deposit box. The one that held her mother's wedding ring and every paper she was told to forget. The sun broke through, slanting across the marble. Suddenly, it didn't feel like a grave. It felt like a root. Claire whispered, "Let the soil remember the truth." We're done with silence.